Coming up today here on the Raiders Report, let's get into the latest around Davante Adams. There is a brand new report around 1-7 that the entire nation needs to see. And then here at the end of today's show, Maxx Crosby called out the Pat McAfee show. If you haven't seen what the Condor had to say, he's putting to bed a lot of rumors around him not being happy or wanting to be in Las Vegas. Now, here's the one thing. If you didn't see Maxx Crosby call Michael Lombardi a clown, then you need to go check it out. And here's what I was saying last week. I said that I hope Maxx Crosby at some point calls out Michael Lombardi for calling him out on his BS. If you also think that Michael Lombardi is a clown, hit that subscribe button. Keep Max's name out your mouth, Michael Lombardi. So if you haven't seen the latest here around Davante Adams, earlier today, Jordan Schultz had a few tweets that went out with some of the latest going on around the silver and black. The Raiders' preference as an organization is to get a Davante Adams trade done sooner rather than later, per multiple sources. But the Raiders aren't going to just do any deal, and their preferences have not to take any of the money remaining on Adams' contract, expect things to ramp up this week. The Raiders have been seeking a second rounder, an additional pick in a trade for Davante Adams. I haven't gotten the sense that any team has come close to meeting that asking price as of right now. And then, right as I'm getting ready to film this one, teams interested in trading for Davante Adams have told me it's unrealistic for the Raiders to expect a second rounder while also having the acquiring team take on his full 2024 salary. There doesn't seem to be a team desperate enough to give Vegas everything that they're asking for. Would appear like the Raiders have to give in on something, but Raiders could also just tell teams that they're going to keep Adams and that's it. I'll tell you this right now. The Raiders are not going to just keep Davante Adams. That one, you can just throw it right on out the window. And I know what Jordan Schultz is saying, and I think right now Schultz is talking to all these other NFL teams and not talking to, the Raiders as closely as maybe some of these other teams. I also know this. That's, of course, what other NFL teams are going to say. They're going to try to drive down the price. The Raiders are going to try to drive it up. I think there's going to be some sort of bidding war, and I do honestly believe that the Raiders are going to get a second-round pick. Now, maybe they have to eat a little bit of money, and I'll tell you this right now. If I got to eat $13 million for the silver and black, that way you can turn a maybe third-round pick to potentially become a second-rounder. If you're the silver and black, you got to freaking do it. Yeah, you're going to eat some money. But we're talking about the long-term thing here. And for Davante, we know that he wants to be traded ASAP. We also know that multiple teams are showing interest in Tay. And yes, everybody knows that this trade is going to end up going down. But a receiver this caliber, this talented, there's going to be multiple teams that drive up that price here a little bit. And with the amount of smoke that's going on around Tay, this trade's going to go down in the next 48 hours. Again, I was told it's going to happen tomorrow, October 8th. And when that does happen, if it happens, we'll be live here on the Raiders Report. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure those notifications are turned on. But it's not only Jordan Schultz who is saying it. When you have multiple credible sources kind of all saying the exact same thing, this is why rumors are important. This is why reading the tea leaves are important. This is why where we say where there's smoke, there's fire, and the fire is probably going to happen tomorrow if Davante Adams getting dealt. Here's what Dianna Russini had to say. Since last week, I've had plenty of conversations about where Adams might be traded. But the more pressing question right now, when will he land? As far as the Raiders and the receiver are concerned, they want him to have a new home sometime in the next 48 hours. Russini wrote this about 24 hours ago. Vegas is still in search of a second-round pick as compensation. It's worth noting that the Jets' London road trip won't hold up the process. They flew back immediately after Sunday's loss to the Vikings and at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. New York and the Saints remain the favorites, with the Steelers still firmly in the hunt. The Chiefs and Bills aren't necessarily out of it, though perhaps Buffalo might be more willing to budge after Josh Allen's struggles, which notably came without top receiver Khalil Shakir in the lineup and their loss against Houston. More to come. I agree with what Dianna Russini is saying there, and to me, the sleeper team, the team that could potentially drive up this price a little bit more, is the Buffalo Bills. If I'm sitting there and I'm looking at Buffalo's roster, they are a stud wide receiver away, I think, from legitimately being the best team in the AFC. And I know that the Chiefs have Mahomes. And quite frankly, I'm going to bet on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs to beat the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to do it just simply because of Mahomes. But right now, the Chiefs are without their top two wide receivers. You just watched your division rival, the New York Jets, struggle. They're 2-3 right now. You don't want Davante to go there. The team that I really truly believe is going to drive up this asking price is the Buffalo Bills. But I do have a serious question because I have been asked, I don't know how many times this one over the past week, so I'm going to make this the pinned comment, and I got to know what the nation has to say. Does once a Raider, always a Raider apply to Davante Adams? Give me a yes, give me a no. My answer after this YouTube ad break. I can't believe I'm going to say it, but I'm going to say yes. And the reason why that I'm saying yes is more from a selfish standpoint. When the Raiders traded for Davante Adams, it was one of the most fun shows I've ever done here at Chat Sports. And being able to interact with people here for over 9 hours, that was a show that I will legitimately remember forever. I know Davante's tenure here with the Raiders did not go as planned, but the Raiders deserve blame just like Davante deserves blame. So, yes, I'm going to say that once a Raider, always a Raider does apply to Davante Adams, but it's kind of a yucky taste. It's kind of like when you ask someone, are you, I don't know, divorced? Somebody's like, yeah, it's going to leave a nasty taste in your mouth, but you were once married. That also is a divorce, and that's what the Raiders just got here with Davante Adams. Oh, man. Top Davante destinations, according to Dianna Russini. Again, this is according to what you just saw in that quote. According to Russini, these are the top 5 teams right now in the mix for 1-7. The Jets, Saints, Bills, Steelers, and the Chiefs. And coming up here on today's show, I'm going to tell you what trade I want from those teams, / what trade I think that the Raiders could potentially get. I know that Tay wants out. The Raiders obviously want to move on from Davante, but moving Tay for anything less than a second-round pick, I do think is really foolish by Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce and this entire regime. I get that you don't want to eat the money, but damn it, eat the money, get the extra draft capital. That way we can invest into our freaking future instead of just fighting over pennies and nickels. Let's actually go out and show that we know what the hell we're doing as an organization. Eat the flipping money if you have to do it. I want some draft capital. I'll get into these trades in just a moment, but a huge shout out to our sponsor, Prize Picks. Get $50 when you play 5 at prizepicks.com/CLNS. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money, sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars awarded in winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineup. So for me, here's what I'm doing tonight on Monday Night Football. Right now, they got a Derek Carr deal where you can get it at 185.5 passing yards. I took the more on that. They got a DC deal for being an underdog. Then I took Xavier Worthy, 4.5 rushing yards. I anticipate Andy Reid's going to get him incorporated in some way, 1 or 2 end arounds with the injury to Rashee Rice, with the injury, obviously, to Hollywood Brown. And it kind of kills me inside to take the more on Travis Kelce, but I do have him in fantasy for my family league. And on top of that, somebody's got to get some of these targets. And on Monday Night Football, I think the Chiefs are going to show Derek Carr something that he's used to seeing maybe a little bit with the Raiders in his time past. So download Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. Now, speaking of keeping this lineup alive, top Davante destinations per Russini. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to show you the trade that I would want for the New York Jets, the trade that I would want from the Saints, the trade that I'd want from Buffalo, Steelers, and Kansas City, and so on and so forth. And some of you are like, Mitch, you're going to trade Davante Adams to Kansas City? I'll show you what it's going to cost. It's going to be a lot more than these, I'll tell you that. Now, I do want to be able to roll through these quickly because they're kind of all similar. I want a 2nd and a 6th from the New York Jets. To me, that's a team that they know that they need a receiver. I don't want Mike Williams back, and you're going to see a trend. I don't want any player back in this trade. As long as Aiden O'Connell or the Raiders starting quarterbacks, we're not winning anything this season. So let's get some of this draft capital, and that way you can use some of that draft capital to invest it in going out and getting a quarterback next season. For the Saints, I don't think that they're willing to offer you nearly as much, so therefore that's where you see that 2026 7th-round pick. That's a team that's going to come and try to lowball the Raiders a little bit more. The Bills, for the Buffalo, a 2nd and a 4th. I want to say that they have 3 4th-round picks or something kind of crazy like that. The Bills do. And I know that asking for a 4th is wild. So the Raiders then, they're going to send back a 5th-rounder, which I'm pretty sure the Buffalo Bills do not have right now. What about the Pittsburgh Steelers? The Steelers are becoming a more and more intriguing team, especially with reports out there. If you guys haven't seen, if you follow a lot of Steelers beat reporters, and I was talking to our Steelers host here at Chat Sports about Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, it kind of sounds like they might go with Russell Wilson at QB. And if that happens, Justin Fields, I don't know if Pittsburgh would trade him, but the Raiders have called Fields before. That might be one of the only ways that the Raiders could potentially save their job. But here's a trade to at least keep in mind. Pittsburgh, they're looking for a receiver, and George Pickens is not happy where he's at. And then here's my trade that I would accept from the Kansas City Chiefs. The Raiders, when they traded for Davante Adams, they got a 1st and a 2nd-round pick. That's what I want. If Kansas City's willing to give me a 1st and 2nd-round pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, I'll take that trade. I know that that's never going to happen. I'll admit, Kansas City, if you're trying to go for a three-peat, there's going to be an overprice. But, that's like getting a car in 2022, going to the car dealership 2 years later or 3 years later after your lease and going, all right, I'd like to be able to sell you this car back for exactly what I paid for it. This is never going to happen. And I don't think that the Raiders are ever going to trade for Kansas City. But based on all the reports out there of what the Raiders could potentially get, if you're able to get a 1st and a 2nd-round pick for Davante, send him off to Kansas City. At this point, I know that that's going to kill us inside for this season, but I don't think Davante is going to be there next season, and then you get a 1st and a 2nd-rounder to build for your future. It sucks. This whole situation sucks. So predict it. Who ends up trading for Davante Adams? When you hear all these stories, all these rumors, this one is going to go down in the next 48 hours. When it does, we will be live. You're about to get hit with a YouTube ad break. Scroll on down and give me your prediction of where you think 1-7 ends up playing. I'm going to continuously say the New York Jets. To me, he seems like he wants to play with Rodgers. He seems like he potentially wants to play with Derek Carr. But if I was close to Davante, I'm not. If I was near Davante's team, I would say, what's the most important thing? If the answer is actually winning, then the team that you should look to go to is the Buffalo Bills. If you just want to play with a quarterback that you've played with before, then sure, go to New York or go to New Orleans. But what's really a problem in that whole thought process is the Jets with Davante Adams aren't winning that division. The Saints with Davante Adams aren't winning that division. So if your goal is to actually win playoff games, why wouldn't you go to a team that I think has a legit chance of making the playoffs? Because if I was a betting man right now, I don't think New Orleans is going to the playoffs. I don't think that the New York Jets are going to the playoffs. Do I think the Bills are? Yeah. Do I think the Chiefs are? Yeah. Do I think the Steelers are? If Pittsburgh has Davante, then yeah, I think that team's going to end up going to the playoffs. Coming up next here on the show, if you haven't seen Maxx Crosby and what he said, not to Pat McAfee, but what he said about the Pat McAfee show, I got to give Crosby his flowers, and I don't know if he saw what I was saying, because everything that I said last week, Maxx Crosby literally did that exact same thing yesterday after that Raiders loss to the Broncos, and I know how frustrated he was. If you haven't seen the context, so last week Michael Lombardi went on the McAfee show and said that there was a lot of drama with Maxx and the Raiders, essentially that Maxx was unhappy with the silver and black because of the whole Davante Adams situation. Lombardi said Maxx was dealing with a hamstring injury when we know he was dealing with a high ankle sprain. He also speculated that Maxx wanted to go out of Las Vegas and that Lombardi didn't know the whole story, so he just went up there and was talking out of his ass. And I know a lot of people that watch this show know the story, and I know the people that watch this show know the whole, everything going on with Maxx, where the Raiders told him not to show up week 4 against the Browns because they wanted him to rest that high ankle sprain to the best of his ability instead of standing on that sideline for 4 hours, probably jumping around and not healing correctly. It was what he was told to do. Lombardi took that information and was like, Davante once traded, and now so does Maxx Crosby. So Maxx yesterday, when he was asked about the whole thing, about if he's happy being a Raider and whatnot, I have the quotes here, and I am really, really happy Max did this. And I already said this to, I was tweeting at McAfee where, Pat, you've done such a good job being able to build your brand, being able to build YouTube. And quite frankly, like I look at somebody like McAfee and go, can you imagine if our show's something like that in 10, 15 years down the road? For a young YouTuber, like I want to be able to do what McAfee's doing in 10 to 15 years from now. But with also that being said, if you're going to bring somebody up about like Michael Lombardi to talk about the Raiders, you also got to do your homework. You got to go back and look at why Michael Lombardi hates the Raiders, and every time he talks about the Raiders, it's nothing but BS. It just makes your program look bad, Pat. So if you need someone to talk about the Raiders, literally anybody else with a pulse, me included, would love to be able to do it, and quite frankly, it would make your show look a lot better. So here's what Crosby had to say about McAfee's show. And then I got to hear these clowns that are talking online and talking on the Pat McAfee show saying something going on, and they're speaking for me saying I should be on the sideline when I got a high ankle sprain. These clowns are sitting on the couch talking about what I should be doing, but the reality is I'm gaining yardage and trying to get right. And so I get back on the field. Everybody knows my intentions, and they're trying to speak for me when if you speak to me and you know what's going on, then we could have a conversation. But don't speak on my name when you don't know what the hell's going on. So you got clowns that are online and talking. They got their one day of the week, or they get to go on the Pat McAfee show and talk about what we should do. You were a general manager, he's talking about Lombardi here, for 1 year. So it's embarrassing. Don't speak for me. I'm going to speak for my guys, and that's all that I care about. So when you heard all this stuff going on, and Lombardi and McAfee show obviously gets a lot of eyeballs, but it'll also create a lot of negative attention towards Max on top of all the other negative attention that we had going on last week with Davante Adams. And then, obviously Max was ticked off because he wants to be a Raider. And Max even said, at the end of this whole thing of all the speculation from McAfee and Lombardi, he goes, you know where I want to be. I got this shit tatted on my body. And I know how Max loves this team. Max is the definition of a Raider. Do I know that Max wants to win? Yes, he absolutely does. And quite frankly, I want Max to want to win. But Max never wants to leave the Raiders. The only way that Maxx Crosby leaves the Raiders is at, I'm going to say 4 or 5 more years down the road. He's 32, 33 years old, and we are in the exact same situation that we are in now. He takes a 1-year rental somewhere else to try to go win a Super Bowl, and then the moment that works or does not work, he will come back to the Raiders, he will sign a 1-day contract, maybe a little bit more, and then retire a Raider. The only way Maxx Crosby goes anywhere else is if the Raiders continue to be a dumpster fire the way that they are a dumpster fire right now.